Our main speaker today is Dr. Andy Boyd. He'll be giving a talk entitled The World's Most Energy Efficient Means of Transportation, and you've probably never even heard of it. Andy is a longtime Oasian, so most of you probably know him, but please help me welcome to the front Dr. Andy Boyd.
Okay, good morning, and it's fun to be back up on the podium. Oh, very good, thank you. It's fun. No, it's okay, I'd prefer. It's fun to be back up on the podium. I was the first speaker that got canceled 2 years ago from the Oasis talk. So part of what I'll show you what I did. I actually took that a little bit further. Before I head into the most energy efficient thing, I'm going to do 5 minutes on a completely different topic. Thank you. Mostly just because I think it's kind of fun. So I think you'll bear with me. Think of this as like the cartoon before the actual movie. Okay. So what happened was, briefly through this, I heard this piece of music and I knew there was something visually I wanted to do with it conceptually. And so, but I thought, I'm going to need to get some 3D software, so I went out, checked out 3D software. 3D software, very expensive, hard to learn to use and stuff. And then I realized I had an epiphany, and it led me to be able to do this project. So this epiphany is that, first of all, as we know, a film is just a collection of still frames, one after another. Typically 24 to 30 still frames, one after another, to make a film. The second really cool part is the way we digitize pictures. So this is a picture that I took around our neighborhood at one time. And the interesting thing is, with digital pictures, everything's a point. So you've heard of pixels. This picture is just made up of lots of different individual points of color. And that's what any of your files, your pictures come with. You take one, it gets translated into this these days. So it's one dot, one picture. And so here you can kind of see, I've kind of shown what it's like. These are the pixels. Each pixel can have exactly one color assigned to it. You don't get multiple colors. The color palette that's typically used has about 17 million different colors, so you can get a lot of different colors for each pixel. And you've probably heard some things like HD has 1920 by 1080 pixels, which makes up about 2 million pixels for one picture. Okay, so my idea was, all I have to do is I can write these files directly without doing anything. I'll do it in a low-level programming language, and I'll put this whole film together based on just my own computer writing out these individual files and putting them back to back. Now, I'm going to go completely different direction here for just 1 second, because while I was researching this week, I found this incredibly interesting. But if you actually look close up at a pixel, it actually has 3 different colors associated with it: a red, green, and a blue. And by just varying the intensities of these 3 different colors, you get all the different colors that we can see. That's how the technology actually works. I'll talk about that in just a second. This is an attempt at humor. So, and this is actually a close-up of a screen. This is actually, if you got really close up to a screen and all 3 of the pixels were all lighted at their brightest intensity of red, green, and blue, this is what they'd look like. You can see I've kind of squared off 1 pixel. And in fact, when they're all blazing this particular color, that's the color white. So if you could look here, you'd see all those pixels blazing like that. It's white. Here I've given some other examples. I just took back the intensity of the 3 different colors. And as you go back in the upper left-hand corner, that's a shade of gray. So if you keep the balance the same. To the right on the top, I've got red and green, but I've shut down the blue, and you get yellow. And then you can see in the lower corner, red and green. Let's see. Actually, red and blue, and knock out most of the green. And you get magenta, and then the last one's cyan. I'm going to ask a question, and this is a trick question. Do you remember back when you were doing mixing colors back in probably elementary school? Do you remember what the three primary colors were? Red, yellow, blue, right? Not red, green, blue. And the interesting thing is that when they're shining light at the eye as opposed to mixing colors, red, green, and blue turn out to be the best primary colors, and then these other colors, cyan, magenta, and yellow, turn out to be the first secondary colors. So, okay, so very quickly, when I looked into this, I was thinking, wait, I know what the wavelength of a particular color of light is, and you can't reconstruct that from just these three sets of colors. The reading about it, it's really interesting. I'm sure you've heard of, maybe heard of, in your eyes, the eye receptor has rods and cones. Now, the rods are very receptive to light, but they don't do color, so that's why you see things at night in black and white, is because it's your rods that have taken over, and your cones can't work in the dark. But we actually have three types of cones. One that's very sensitive to red, one that's sensitive to green, and one that's sensitive to blue. And so it's actually what the pixels are doing, they're actually tricking the brain into thinking they're seeing a particular color just by manipulating the individual cones that we have in our heads. So I thought that was really cool. Another thing about this is people generically have just slightly different mixes of cones. Like some of us have more red cones, some of us have more green receptive cones. So the reality is that we probably all do see different colors when we're a little bit. Of course, there's the whole mechanism what goes on in your brain, but we partially get wired for that. Yeah, so we have three, by the way, this has been known since the early 19th century. The pixels have just taken 19th century technology and pushed it out there because they were able to do this with light sources and filters early 19th century. This is just done with flashlights here. And last but not least, the mantis shrimp, I discovered, has 16 different types of cones. So basically, it lives a life where it can see it can see well down into the infrared, up into the ultraviolet. It has a much richer, colorful life. Now, what that means to the mantis shrimp, I have no idea. But it's capable of doing it. Okay. It's just kind of a little piece of video artwork that I did by writing a low-level program, and it's 1,800 frames, each one about 2 million pixels each. Thank you for allowing me to share that. That could have been entitled, "This is what Andy did with 3 months of his time in pandemic lockdown." And what I'm going to show next is also going to be entitled that. Now we're going to get to the regular presentation. And I had this presentation prepared, and then the COVID came, and I thought, you know, I'm going to make a movie out of it. So I went and actually, I thought this will be my first movie project. And So I went ahead and did it. Part of it was because you'll see why. I kind of wanted to send it out on the web and see if I could get some interest in it. But what I will do is, rather than give you a talk, I will show you my 5-minute talk that's been prepared over a break, and then I'll take some questions. I will say that the credits at the end of this are about a minute long, and usually people step. I'm going to leave it to go for the credits because I like the music there too. But I'll also watch where we go at the end of the credits because we'll have a test after the credits too. Hi, today I'd like to share with you one of the most fascinating engineering ideas ever conceived, and I'd like to conclude by challenging you to come up with a way to make it work in practice. I'm standing here in Houston facing due west. If I were to point to Santiago, Chile, it would be roughly due south in that direction. Actually, that's not true unless you're a member of the Flat Earth Society. To be more precise, Santiago is that way. Let me show you how we can make use of that fact. If we dug a tunnel to Santiago and set a car at the entrance, it would roll downward. But when the car emerges in Santiago, it's traveling uphill, stopping just as it arrives. Think of that, a trip from Houston to Santiago powered entirely by gravity. No burning of fossil fuels. That's very environmentally friendly. When the car enters the tunnel in Houston, it's going down at a 34-degree angle. But the deeper the car goes, the less steep the angle becomes. Remember, down is always toward the center of the Earth. At the midpoint, the car actually levels off for just an instant before it begins its journey back uphill, eventually reaching Santiago. A couple of fun facts about the trip. First, for the entire trip, you'd feel about 84% of the weight you feel on the surface. That's really quite remarkable. Your weight is determined by the incline of the tunnel and by the amount of the earth that's underneath you. They both change throughout the trip, but exactly counterbalance one another. If the entry angle is 90 degrees, that is straight down, you would be weightless for your entire journey. A second fun fact is that the trip itself would take right around 42 minutes, much faster than an airplane, which would take around 8.5 hours. So the idea is simple. Dig a tunnel from Houston to Santiago, lay train tracks, and run a gravity train between the two cities. But of course, there are engineering challenges. Let's take a look at them. First, the interior of the Earth is very hot. At roughly 20 miles beneath the Earth's surface, the Earth's crust gives way to the mantle. Its coolest outer layers are 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and it only gets hotter as we go down. Quite simply, the makeup of the Earth is an insurmountable engineering challenge. But what if we limited the depth of our tunnels? Would it then be possible to make gravity trains work? Well, let's take a look at a shorter tunnel, say from Houston to Dallas, about 225 miles. A straight tunnel would reach a depth of 1.5 miles. That's pretty deep, but there are tunnels and mines in the world that already reach this depth. The angle of the tunnel's entry would be about 1.5 degrees, leading to very gentle acceleration. Still, at its fastest, the train would reach a speed of almost 500 miles an hour. And the length of the trip? 42 minutes, exactly the same length of time it took from Houston to Santiago. In fact, the length of the trip from Houston to any other point on Earth is the same. Longer distances correspond to steeper tunnels and higher speeds, shorter distances to shallower tunnels and lower speeds. And when we work the math, all travel times are the same. So are shorter tunnels a real possibility? Unfortunately, we still face some stiff engineering challenges. For one, digging tunnels is extremely expensive, typically hundreds of millions of dollars per mile. Another challenge is friction. Friction between the train and the track, and friction in the form of air resistance. Track friction can be addressed using magnetic technology. Air resistance is a bigger challenge since it requires removing air from the tunnel. Doing so would be expensive and require considerable energy, thus defeating a key advantage of the gravity train. So it seems as though gravity trains are a really nifty idea, but only an idea. The engineering challenges are just too formidable. Or are they? Every day, millions of people are ferried from one location to another on moving walkways requiring power. What if we replaced them with gravity-powered people movers? Think about the amazing number of possibilities. Or what about gravity trains to move people from one airline terminal to another? The engineering challenges to make something practical are considerable, but beyond the practical, there's something else at stake. Bragging rights. Who can be the first person, or research group, or university, or city to deploy a gravity-powered means of moving people about? We have the technology. The question is how to take the basic idea and make it both energy efficient and capable of moving people in a way that's practical. Are you up to the challenge? Okay, now for the promised tests. Or test, what cities did we visit in the final round? Paris, Kuala Lumpur, that's right. Seattle and Sydney, Australia, that's right. Okay, with that, that's my talk.
There's a satellite that looks down on the house we used to live in. You can zoom in on the people, the things we left behind. There's a satellite that looks down on the house we view. The satellite from just like me, it can't see what's going on inside. I can't figure you out, I'm so dense, so I'm like a dying star. Past tense of burning bright, just burning hot. I can't stop, I know it's not enough to safely reel your atmosphere in. Gravity always wins. There's a way you smile at me that's like a smile I know forever. It confounds me some, cause it's not one that I can place a name. There's a way you let me hold you that confounds me even further, cause you're not holding me back. I'm new to this game. I can't figure you out, I'm so dead and so I'm like a dying star. Past tense of burning bright, just burning hot. I can't stop, I know it's not enough to safely reel your atmosphere in. Gravity always wins. Hey, you make me blurry, warm and shaky like a good heart attack. I roll with the tremors, roll with the tremors. The words I try out hit the air and turn to laughing gas. It drowns out my tenor, drowns out my tenor. I forget what I'm doing, I give into the fun. When it finally comes back to me, then I'm back to square one. And I can't figure you out, I'm so dense, I'm like a dying star. Past tense of burning bright, just burning hot. I can't stop, I know it's not enough to safely reel your atmosphere in. Oh, and gravity always, gravity always, gravity always, gravity always, gravity always, gravity always. Oh, gravity always wins. Thank you.